is the juice worth the squeeze? You got to be able to have that discernment to know.
I will find a way to win it somehow, some way, no matter what.
That sounds like a horrible emotional existence.
It's delusional.
It's delusional. At the end of the day, the only thing that wins is consistency.
Yeah.
It's always a good time to call.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Hey team, welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. Mark McGraw here. Today I have our colleague Josh Pitchford. Hello, Josh.
Hello. Good to be back.
Good to be back as always. I like doing these together. We've riffed a few of these here recently, and it seems to have a good flow to it. So we'll keep it up.
It does. It does. I enjoy doing it and chatting with you about all those things. So
we were on a walk the other day, hanging out, trying to get some exercise after too big of a lunch, and we started talking about how salespeople lie to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And we came up with at least 7 lies that salespeople tell themselves. And so we thought we'd share it with the group here and talk through these. But if you ever think about it, man, fair to say that a lot of times when we lie to ourselves, we don't tell ourselves the truth, or sometimes there's misbeliefs that we have about something, and it gets us into sales hell.
It can, no doubt about it. Think about, a lot of salespeople do a better job at selling themselves, even in the negative, than they do selling their prospect. Yeah. So,
you've said before yourself that we're the best at selling ourselves a lot of times into something. So it's similar, I think, in many respects.
Unfortunately, we sell ourselves at times as salespeople on these 7 lies, and this list is probably just scratching the surface.
I would say that's going to be the case. All right, so here's 7 that we thought about. Let's talk about these. One is my job is to educate the prospect, and I see this one a lot. I think a lot of people think that when they get into sales, my job is to tell the customer about what I do, what we do, all the stuff. I got my take on this. Why is this a lie that you see as well?
I see this a lot in, people we work with, especially in a highly technical sale. And they try to credentialize themselves with more product knowledge or whatever, try to almost bond in that way sometimes. But what they end up doing that I see at times is almost killing bonding, because, not to get too technical, talk about transactional analysis, but, one of the child ego states inside of transactional analysis that we talk about is the little professor. And the little professor is, the kind of know-it-all in the room, talks to their prospect, at that they know their system, their product, they know their environment, if you will, better than they do, which, you might have the best intentions, but it just doesn't come off that way when you feel like sometimes you got to overeducate the prospect, and all kinds of things happen after that as well.
Yeah, there's a great Sandler rule for that, and that is, your income as a seller is dependent more upon the information you gather than by what you dispense. And I think it really ties to number 1, which is, my job is to educate the prospect. I think a better way of looking at it is our job is to qualify the prospect.
No doubt.
We need to be in qualification mode every much or even more in some cases than we do need to be in selling mode.
No doubt. And, the number of times I've done a coaching call with a client and they're all prepped up on, what's our leave behind going to be and what do we need to prep and all this stuff. And never once does the thought, hey, what questions do we want to ask? What questions do we anticipate getting ever cross their mind? And that's much better use of time to make sure that you're not overeducating, but you're qualifying, like you're saying. Yeah.
And I completely agree. And so part of this plan is if you're going to give something, in Sandler, one of our rules is no free consulting. And by the way, I think this is a McGraw law, but McGraw law is know the rules so well that you know when to break them. And I think there is a time for free consulting. But at the same time, if you think about if you're going to educate and give something away, get something back in exchange so that we're in a better position to qualify the opportunity for its reality, which kind of goes to the lie number 2, if we flip over there, and that is, I have to win every deal. And so this one ties to the fact that we're very competitive people. And I think a lie that we tell ourselves is that every deal is winnable. I will find a way to win it somehow, some way, no matter what. And thoughts on your side?
That sounds like a horrible emotional existence, because
Delusional.
it's delusional. That's a good way to put it. I mean, I'd say we're pretty decent salespeople ourselves, and I'm pretty sure that you don't have 100% close rate.
Not even close.
Neither do I. And so making sure that, we're finding the winnable deals, we should be working on those. The winnable deals, go back to the qualification point, is it even winnable? And, good prospects play their lines, all of those things that we're looking for. Unfortunately, I believe that salespeople use happy ears to hear the good lines, and they filter out the bad stuff. Going back to delusional, and we are always there too from time to time. We always want to hear the good things, but you find ways to sell yourself that it's winnable. But having that a little bit more raw edge to it will probably be a little bit better mindset to have.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the energy that we expend to finish second, which is actually, if you think about it, finishing second is actually worse than finishing last. If you finish last, you might have not put as many hours of selling energy into it. If you finish second, you busted your tail. It's like entering in a 1 mile race or a 5K or whatever. And if your goal is to win the race, okay, you're going to put a lot of energy into it. The thing is that energy you put into it, you're not putting into something else. So if I enter a race, a 100-yard dash against Usain Bolt, I should not be in that race.
Right.
By the way, I shouldn't be in any race that, doesn't involve a car or something. But the reality is that we need to use our discretion when we look at a project and look at a deal, because we're not going to win them all. And we need to, almost like ammo, our time is ammunition. We need to use it wisely and make sure that we're going after the right targets. Otherwise, we're squandering opportunity.
There's opportunity cost for everything you go to try to win.
Yeah.
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
I love that line.
You got to be able to have that discernment to know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And by the way, one last thing, and we'll move to number 3 is, I was talking with a client just yesterday, in fact, and they were talking about, I asked them, how long does it take to do a quote or a proposal? And the sales guy, 20 people on the call, he goes, actually, it only takes me about 5 minutes. The problem is it takes the rest of the organization about 12 hours. So I put in the form to have them go create it, but they're burning, the company's burning 12 hours for every proposal. So you think about that. If you have a low chance to win, don't use your company's resources on something that it's a waste of ammunition.
Not sure who that was. That's great awareness, though.
It was great awareness.
That's a business person's mindset versus just a salesperson's mindset.
Absolutely.
That's
a good
awesome.
point. It's a good point. I have to discount in order to win.
Well, if you're going to win every deal, you think you have to discount.
I guess that's true.
2 and 3, we're good at lying to ourselves. We're on a roll here. No doubt. I mean, the amount of discounting that goes on and not realizing what the downstream impact is of that. I probably should let you talk to it because I don't know the math out of the top of my head, but there's math behind for every percentage point you cut off the downstream impact on profit. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know, and it takes a table to kind of explain it. But the principle is that if you gave a 10% discount, depending upon your gross margins, you might have to sell 50% more product to make up a 10% discount, depending upon what it looks like on the bottom line. And it is a huge impact financially. It's, in my opinion, it's rarely, it's not often only about price. The buyer, that's their common denominator. The buyer in many cases,
lowest common denominator.
Literally the lowest common denominator. It's the
Absolutely.
easiest thing. It's the laziest thing for a buyer to evaluate is price.
Absolutely.
And as a result of that, it's easy for them to focus on it. If the seller believes that it's all about price, they're lying to themselves. By the way, even if it was about price, I would coach a salesperson and say, just lie to yourself in another way and say, it's not about price, because you have a better chance of asking the right questions and taking the right actions that'll lead to a sale. If you focus and say, it's not about price, even though maybe it is, because you'll end up at a better destination by thinking that than you will if you just think I need to discount to win.
Absolutely. And that's when sellers go in that are only trying to win them all and win them on price. They go in and they're doing more selling internally. Those people, and I know that's not going on, whoever you were talking about, that the company invests 12 hours to do a quote. Well, think about not only they're investing 12 hours to do a quote, if that seller wasn't so smart and he then went back, or he or she, whoever it was, went back and was selling that team internally on, oh, we got to discount it to win this thing. You got to sharpen your pencil. Before they even hear that from the prospect, the old sharpen your pencil thing, and they're doing it internally. The cost of that is so high that, and you do the same thing, Mark, is like, you got to learn to set price aside. There's going to be, at some point, somebody's going to have to justify the investment. There's going to be a conversation about it. But to your point, you got to be able to set that aside. And whether you believe it or not, you have got to make sure that you act a certain way. Going back to our belief wheel that we could talk about here, you got to act a certain way to ask certain questions to make sure that you're focused on what really matters in the sale. Because you can win on price, but you're going to lose on price too. And those other things are the things that are going to keep the business.
And a lot of times buyers will say it was a price decision. And look, I just think that that's often not the case. It's a head fake that the buyer is using because there was some other factor that was in on it. One of the things that I see in this in a big way is, let's say somebody's selling something for $1,000, just to make up the number, 10,000, whatever number you want to use. And they go in and they offer, and I'll just use an easy 10% discount on a $10,000 sale. That's $1,000. Basically, what you've just said to the buyer is, I've lied to you in terms of what the value of what it is I'm selling right up front.
That's a great mindset.
And so one thing for sure that everybody should be doing is if you're going to give a discount, don't give a discount without getting something back. So now there's associated value with it. Otherwise, this is sort of how I trick myself. Otherwise, I've just lied to the customer on the front end and said, what I charged you, I was about to rob you, so to speak, of 10%, because I'm willing to give 10% because you asked. Well, that's just a bad way of thinking about it. And it devalues what we do, both in terms of the product and our integrity.
No doubt. You got to have integrity first and foremost. You got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and your prospect in the face, when you discount like that.
So another one that we have on here, why don't you, in fact, just jump into number 4?
Sure. One of my favorites, it's a bad time to call.
Yeah.
So, you're sitting there and the mindset I'm having is sitting in front of like, hey, I got these things in my pipeline. They need some follow-up. They need some things done on them. And you're sitting there justifying to yourself why it's not a good time to call or why it's not a good time to do your prospecting or whatever it happens to be. My favorite saying is there's only 3 good days to prospect. That's yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so, there's, go scroll through LinkedIn. There's all these studies that, they can track with analytics, which analytics are cool. We're living in 2025 where we know things now that we never knew before. But at the end of the day, the only thing that wins is consistency. Yeah. It's always a good time to call. That's what you have to talk yourself into. It's always a good time to call.
There's never a bad time to call. Now, there might be better times to call, but there's never. I had a client once. Again, I feel like I had this client. It's half my stories start with that, and but hey,
that's what we do.
That's what we do. And what I was talking with her one day, and she said to me, sort of just in passing, she goes, "Well, I don't call anybody between 11:30 and 1 because they're at lunch." And I said, well, I'm just curious, do you take lunch from 11:30 to 1? She goes, yeah, I take lunch. I said, do you assume then that every executive and every business owner, every decision maker, that they're all also taking lunch from 11:30 to 1? She goes, well, I guess I was until you asked me that question. And it turned out that for the better part of 20 some years, she never called anyone. You think about that. You lose an hour and a half. And there's a lot of people that go to lunch, but there's also a lot of people like me. There's a lot of times I'm not having lunch. I'm having lunch at my desk, and or I'm hanging out here. And so people are far more reachable, but that's a lie they tell themselves. And we ended up buying her back. Think about it, an hour and a half a day, 5 days a week. It's like 7 hours. It's almost a full work day, potentially, that you can earn back by a small change in our thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I was sitting there doing the math, 7.5 hours a week multiplied by, let's say you work 50 weeks a year, multiplied by 20 something years.
Yeah. And take a third of that and you still have a big number.
Yeah. So there's never a bad time to call, which is ironic for us to say is, when we're training our prospecting call, it's, hey, did I catch you at a bad time?
That's right.
Most time like, no, actually this works as good a time as any. It's always, just call.
Yeah, just call. Pick up the phone, make the dial, whatever it might be. By the way, that maybe a subset of that is where you can default to use the phone, not the email. And that's a subset maybe of one of those two is don't just send the email, make a phone call. One of the things you've observed as you've been doing a lot of phone camp kind of work with clients where you're making calls together in a group.
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot more pickup rates actually. A lot of people say pickup rates have gone down. You've seen pretty much statistically just the opposite.
Yes.
Over the last 6 months.
It's, there's something to be said for good info, calling at the right level of the organization, cell phones.
Calling cell phones. It's a huge part of Local number,
big one there. Calling in Atlanta, around Atlanta, when I'm doing work with clients and those kind of things. And so, yeah, pickup rates are fine. And one of the things I always like to say is, the default switch should always be, to the phone, is because what shortens your timeline to have a conversation? Is it, you got to trade a bunch of emails and hope they reply or, those kind of things, or picking up the phone? What shortens that timeline between your outreach and you having a conversation? Phone's still undefeated.
Still undefeated. I have a friend of mine. This one's not a client. I have a friend of mine who's one of the best salespeople that I've known. He got a product in the Apple stores.
Wow.
Now think about that. I mean, if you get a product in the Apple store, you're golden.
Yeah.
And he worked for a big company and all this. And he did it in a relatively short period of time. And I said, Chris, exactly how did you do that? And he goes, and he looked at me like with this like look on his face, like, I called him, and that's how he navigated.
It was like it was the Captain Obvious thing to him.
It's the direct path,
absolutely,
from human to human. So anyway, I think that's absolutely legitimate. Number 5 on the list, we tell ourselves the lie. Well, I don't feel ready yet, or I'll wait until I'm ready. I don't feel like it right now. So I got 3 podcasts on this one, but why don't you start?
It's, Sandler rule. It's not how I feel that determines how I act. It's how I act that determines how I feel.
Yeah. Why don't you break that down a little bit?
And so what that means is, if you're in that scenario where you have some self-limiting beliefs, I don't feel like it right now. You're not feeling real confident. You're not energetic or whatever. Everything's going to get better once you take action.
Yeah.
And so default to the action, just do it. When I'm training it, you've heard my line, make sure you go back to Nike's tagline from 38 years ago. Just do it. We're all going to feel better. You're going to feel better. Everyone's going to feel better by just doing it and taking action. If we wait until we feel good, we're going to be waiting for a long time. You got to be really good at controlling, those things that elevate up your identity side, to use some Sandler vernacular, identity versus role, and building up your self-esteem, self-confidence, and all that stuff. That stuff can take time.
Yeah.
And the quickest way to do it is to take action and feel good about the fact that you picked up the phone. regardless of outcome, whether they picked up, whether, it wasn't a connection, there wasn't a good conversation, doesn't matter.
You did what you could control.
Take the thrill in the fact that you were gutsy enough to pick up the phone and do what you were supposed to do. That's the win, because that's the controllable, like you were saying.
Yeah, and it does. I think it really makes us as humans feel better when we take a chance, when we do something that we're not feeling like we're doing. We build our self-confidence, our self-esteem, and we become more indestructible and more mentally tough when we do the things that are the tough things. And that's part of that is taking actions. By the way, one thing I find that just helps tremendously is set really small goals when you do that. If I get on the treadmill in the morning, or when I'm almost every single day, and you could probably take almost out of that sentence. I mean, it's almost every single day, pretty much every day, is I say to myself, look, I'm going to do this for at least 10 minutes. I can do anything for 10 minutes. And then 40 minutes later, I'm still going on the treadmill. Okay. So that's the reality of what goes on that front. So if you set small goals, sometimes it's easy to get started. And then before you know it, you're rocking and rolling.
Absolutely.
Number 6. This is good. I have to do everything that the buyer asks for. Otherwise, they won't like me and they won't buy from me.
Oh, I could let you go on for days on this
Feel
one
free.
right here.
Feel free.
Yeah, go ahead. Start on this one.
I mean, this one bugs me. And I think a lot of times in sales, we believe that we're going to win the business because somebody likes us. And I'm not saying that, we're all things being equal, we're going to win more business when they like us for sure.
No doubt.
Okay. But if the strategy is I'm going to be a relationship salesperson and I'm going to get people to, quote, like me, and they're going to buy from me just because they like me, I think it's a very thin strategy because the fact of the matter is they need to respect you and they need to see value in what you bring to them and to their business, if that's what you're selling into. And liking you is a distant second to, are you bringing value to my life?
No doubt about it. In a B2B sale, it's absolutely crucial that you're bringing value, you're credentialed, all of those things, and don't become a sales golden retriever,
yes,
so to speak, that they say, go fetch this, and you go fetch it and bring it right back. Yeah, right.
We're running over there, getting the stick and doing the quote for them, and you're bringing the quote back, and
golden retrievers.
They give you another something to go do.
It's nonstop. And I love the image that we have somewhere and all the stuff that we where we're doing training and coaching. The circus hoops.
Yeah.
The image of the dog or whatever it is jumping through the hoop. And it's the perfect image for what salespeople at times talk themselves into. Let's not forget, we're lying to ourselves here. That's what this is all about, is that they're lying to themselves that they have to jump through all these hoops. That they're not strong enough at times to ask another question on, happy to do that. Let me ask you why does that matter? How is that going into your decision-making process? And,
if I do that, what happens after that?
Absolutely. Ask, use the reversing technique to ask a clarifying question to know what happens next and why it matters and all those things. But, to become the sales golden retriever, we think that we got to be liked by everybody. So we just go off and do it and come back for another task and hoping and wishing and praying that at some point it closes. And as one of my clients said one time, the only thing closing business for us is father time. Right? They eventually run out of things to give you, and you hope it's you at the end that wins it. But a lot of times it's somebody that knew how to get things to the finish line that's already won the business.
And, to be clear, we definitely want people to like us if at all possible. When they like you, they share more information, you get more knowledge. Sure. A lot of good things come out of it. So, but if you have a choice between doctors, and one doctor over here is a really nice person and they're likable and they're friendly, and the other doctor is the best in the world at fixing this particular problem, but they're like Dr. House from the series. They're as unpleasant, like hugging a cactus. And which do you want to have?
You want to have the expert in your life.
It's just absolutely the case. So value trumps relationship 9 times out of 10, maybe 10.
No doubt about it. Get your respect from being, the trusted advisor and the person that can truly be a guide with them along their buying process versus just doing whatever they wish. So
that's exactly right. Number 7, last one is people buy on logic, not emotion. And I'll start with this one.
This is a good one.
I think there's a great Sandler rule. This one's made me a lot of money. And the rule is that people buy emotionally and justify their decisions intellectually. So what's key to me about that, at least when I see that, Josh, is that they buy emotionally. And I do believe that no matter if you're selling air filters for sewage treatment plants, and yes, that exists. Shout out to my friends at Pure Air. And so if you've got that right there, right, that is still an emotional decision, but it's backed by intellectual specifications, justifications, all of the technical stuff. So the key word that brings those together to me is and. They buy emotionally and they justify their decisions intellectually. It takes both.
You got to have both, no doubt about it. And more often than not, you got to have one before the other.
Yes.
And there's a reason that the order it's in matters so very much because there's an emotional connection to everything. What their emotional connection is found bottom of the Sandler pain funnel, their personal impact, all those things. That's where a lot of that emotion comes out and may have nothing to do with the product. May have to do with the frustration of dealing with their current supplier that's driving them crazy, that their communication is atrocious. Who knows? Might have nothing to do with the product. It has everything to do with the service they're getting from their current provider.
And you brought up a minute ago that there's a sequence to it. Typically, maybe not always, but almost always, it starts with the intellectual side and then it moves to the emotional side.
Could, yeah.
I mean, just generally speaking, you're going to talk about the techs and specs at some point, but then you're going to start to learn about why that matters. A professional, good consultative seller, they're going to understand what's driving the need behind the tech on that side of things. So that's a big one in there. One of the places I've seen this over and over, and I always snicker and laugh every time because it's such a repeatable thing that I've seen have happen. A company will go out for bid and they'll put together a grid, a matrix of decision making. And so we're going to look at these 3 companies and we're going to use these 27 and a half criteria over here in the rows. And they put a scoring system and it's all sophisticated and all the stuff until the conclusion of who wins the matrix race, the grid race, isn't who they really want to buy from. And invariably they will, we need to change the weighting of this over here because they're going to justify that the person who won that scoring system intellectually is not who they want to go with.
Right.
And it doesn't support their emotional decisions. And they'll rewrite or just toss out the whole spec thing and the matrix and the scorecard for it just so they can make their decision and buy what they really want.
Human beings are emotional beings, and they'll throw out logic at times to get their emotional needs met.
Yeah, so true. That's the list. I think it's a cool list. We could probably make this. That was 7. We could probably make it 70 if we wanted. But
absolutely. I got a feeling we'll get some comments that said that we missed a couple hundred of those.
I would love to hear what some of those are for sure.
Absolutely. So,
all right. Well, excellent. As always, you can reach out for the handout for today and for the notes at buildingyoursalesengine.com. We are always here, ready, willing, and able to go help and support folks that want to go build their sales process and continue to get stronger at their craft. The craft, I might remind everybody, that feeds our families. Okay. And so we're here for you on that if you want to go build out your sales process, whether you're an individual or a company. So look forward to seeing you guys again. And Josh, thanks for joining us. It's a good conversation.
I love it every time. Thanks so much again for the invite.
So, hey, I hope you've gotten a ton of value out of this episode. By far, it's our purpose to help people make money and have fun and have a good time. We're here to help improve your life, to help you make it easier to go sell or to manage your sales team, and ultimately to go build your own sales engine. Don't miss an episode. Best way to go do that is to make sure that you jump out to buildingyoursalesengine.com/follow, where you can link up to all of our latest episodes. For more information about this episode, go to buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can download show notes, transcripts, and other information, including handouts and snapshots of this and other episodes. If you'd like to connect with us to talk about how we can help you build your sales engine, and you are either located in the state of Georgia or are referred to us by one of our clients or affiliated by one of our clients, please reach out to us at buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can click there to book some time with us. We can find out how we can be of help with one another. If you're not in either of those two circumstances, please reach out to sandler.com, where you can find a Sandler office near you. Be well.